What is my video? Stop the share. Okay, turn on the camera. I cannot start my video because now my video is not working. So this camera is not working. Okay. So, it was, but it's not now. It's not remembering me. Picking the right camera. Oh, it doesn't remember me. I'm not sure why not, but whatever it is, we gotta go by there. Share the screen. Conference the camera. Is that working at least? You see the Gemara by you? Oh, my screen doesn't work. I don't. Look at that. My computer must be going KY because now I don't even see the Gemara on my screen. So it is. Oh, now this started to work. Okay, now we're working. So let me just see something. So why is this off? This makes no sense at all. Mamash makes us stop share. Okay, let me do this one more time. Stopping the share, turn my video on. My video will not go on. Okay, but if I share the screen, it will. I'm not sure why it's not. Okay, let's see the Gemara. First, we have to mention that today's broadcast, as well as the whole week, was sponsored by Dubi Ben-Zelevsky. Le'il Nishmas, his mother, whose yahrzeit was on Monday, and Le'il Nishmas, his sister, whose yahrzeit was today. So his mother is Chaya Bas Chaim Baruch Ben-Zelevsky, Ben-Nisham Shirav and Aliyah. And today is the yahrzeit of Leah Sima Bas Reuven. It was Loey. Today's her boy being yahrzeit. Hey Nishmasa Surura B'Tzara Chaim. They should be Litzi Yashar for their family, for the Kehillah, and for all of Klal Yisrael. Okay, Gavalti. So Zok Tehillah Gemara. We were discussing a Mishnah where there was a shot on somebody that he had a relationship with an Eshish. And because of that, we do not allow him to marry her. So we're going to use names. We're going to name names today. And Shimon was married to Rachel. And there's a chashad on Reuven that Reuven fooled around with Rachel. And therefore, Shimon gave Rachel a get. Reuven may not marry Rachel. And even if Reuven illegally marries Rachel, we force Reuven to give Rachel a get. When do we say that you force Reuven to the get? When do we say that Reuven is not allowed to marry Rachel? That's only if there were Adam that saw us. Rav Sheshes commented, Amina Kinayim v'Shachav Rav Omer Lahai Shmaitza. Rav Sheshes must have been sleeping when he said this, because it's not logical. The Tanya, because we learned, Hanitin al Eishashish, if somebody is choshed to have a relationship with an Eishashish. So again, we have Shimon, who was married to Rachel. Reuven, who's a total stranger, not his brother, was choshed to have a relationship with Rachel. And then v'hoitzi ua al yadai. And because of the chshad that Reuven was fooling around with Rachel, Shimon gave Rachel a get. And Rachel didn't proceed to marry Reuven, Rachel went and married Yehuda. And then Yehuda didn't like her, so Yehuda gave her again. Now the moment Rachel married Yehuda, after she was divorced from Shimon, and she didn't marry Reuven, she didn't marry the one who there was choshed, there was a chshad that he was fooling around with her. That breaks the rumor, because the fact that as soon as she got divorced, she went to a third party, that sort of shows that there was nothing going on between Rachel and Reuven. So therefore, imkanas loyot. Therefore, if after Yehuda divorces Rachel, then Reuven went and was makadosh Rachel, then loyoti, then you wouldn't force Reuven to divorce Rachel. So hey chidami, let's try to understand what were the circumstances of the case we just discussed. The Ika Edom, if there were Edom that saw Reuven, who was mizana with Rachel, while Rachel was still married to Shimon, well then ki asa acher v'afzike the kala might happen. Even if she was married to Yehuda in between, and it breaks a rumor, this is not a rumor, this is Edom. So never ever is Reuven allowed to marry Rachel. Ella, you have to say that this case that says that if Yehuda is mafsik, and Kanis Loyotzi is Ella Avdelek Edom. You have to say that there were no Edom. And only that, so since there were no Edom, so it's never proven, it was just a rumor that Reuven was fooling around with Rachel. Therefore, if Yehuda marries her and sort of breaks the rumor, then after Yehuda divorces her, Reuven would be allowed to marry her. But the Taima, the Asa Achev Avzake, even though there was only a rumor in this case of the Brisa, we still don't let Reuven marry Rachel right after Shimon divorces her, because that'll tell people we were right. There's a relationship there. It's only mutter for Reuven to marry Rachel if Rachel first married a third party. She married Yehuda, and then that marriage broke up. Only then will we allow Reuven to marry Rachel. So the Gemara, if it wasn't for the fact that she was married to Yehuda, mafkinon, you would make Reuven divorce her. So the problem is, Rav said only if there's a scenario where there's Edom who saw Reuven be mizana with her, only then do we say that Reuven cannot marry her. But if it was just a rumor, we would let him marry her. Yet here we see that even a rumor prevents Reuven from being able to marry Rachel. So Shver on Rav. Omelach Rav, no. Hu adin the afagav the loyasa acher ba'apzake lekala. In fact, even if Yehuda was never in the picture, we would only force Reuven to give a get to this woman if he illegally married her, if they were Edom. But he lek Edom loymafkin. In fact, if there were no Edom and Reuven married Rachel as soon as Shimon divorced her, it's a very not nice thing to do, and it makes the rumor look real. Nevertheless, you wouldn't force Reuven to give a divorce. So why does the Brisa we just quoted add to the case that before Reuven married Rachel, Rachel got married to Yehuda, a third party? Because the Brisa is trying to tell you a chumrah. Even though this woman Rachel married Yehuda, and that would have broken the rumor that Reuven had a relationship with Rachel, still it's still also the for Reuven to marry her. But regardless, if Reuven married her and there were no Edom, we don't force Reuven to give her a divorce. So that was the first kasha and the first teretz. We have another kasha. The Brisa says, when do you say that we force Reuven to divorce her? It's that if she didn't have any children from her first husband, from Shimon, and therefore by forcing Reuven to divorce her, which reinforces in everyone's mind that there was actually a znus, there won't be a chshad on her children because there are no children. If Rachel has children from Shimon, then loy seitze. If Reuben marries her after Shimon divorces her, we don't tell Reuben to divorce her. Because if we force Reuben to divorce her, that's like declaring that in fact there was nus going on. And if we're declaring that there's nus going on, any of the children that she has from Shimon, people are going to say, how do we know that Shimon's the father? Maybe Reuben's the father. Maybe these children are mamzeir. However, in bo ede tuma, but if it's not a case of a rumor, it's a case where there's real edim, and we know for sure there was his nus, well then afilu yesh lo kama banim teitzi. No matter how many children she has, it's irrelevant. It's usher for Reuben to live with her. So therefore, Reuben has to divorce her. So the problem is you see clearly that Rav would hold over here, that if there's in a case where it's ein labanim, we force her to divorce, even though it's only a rumor, there's no edim. Because only at the end does the bride should discuss what happens of edim. The vice versa, the first half was speaking without edim. It was only a rumor, and when there's only a rumor, b'she'ein labanim, we still force a divorce. So that's shver and Rav. Zok the Gemara, ein nechanami. Rav muki lo l'masnisim b'yesh labanim. In fact, Rav will pass like this price, and that Rav said only with edim you to divorce. Rav taka means only when there's children. Without children, even with her, without children, then without children, then on a rumor you'll force her to divorce. But with children, you'll only force to divorce with edim. And our Mishnah that Rav said was speaking with edim, Rav is going to have to say it's speaking where there's children. So Rav mukil masnisin b'yesh labanim b'yesh leidim. Why did Rav say that the Mishnah is speaking with banim, and therefore he said that there's also have to speak with edim? The time it edim afkinon, and it's only because there's edim. That's why you force Reuben to divorce her. Vileka edim. But if there are no edim, loy mafkinon, then you wouldn't force Reuben to divorce her. Why go that way? Look, make it go much simpler. Look, say the Mishnah is speaking where there's no children, and then we force Reuben to divorce her. Right? Why make it complicated? Rava said the reason why Rav insisted on learning that there must have been Adam, and therefore he had to say there must have been children, is because Masnisin Kashise. The lashon of our Mishnah itself indicates that there are Adam. Because it says, my area Haitziuha means a third party forced Shimon to divorce his wife Rachel. That means Bezdin forced Shimon to divorce his wife Rachel. Why didn't it say Lisni Haitzia? Shimon on his own, because of the rumor, decided to divorce Rachel. It doesn't say that. Rather, it says Haitziuha. Zok the Gemara Ela Kol Haitziuha beBezdin. Haitziuha means Bezdin forced Shimon to divorce his wife. Bezdin doesn't just willy-nilly force people to divorce their wives. Bezdin be'edim hudamafki. Bezdin would have only forced Shimon to divorce his wife if there were edim of his nus. Then they could say she's usher labal, and therefore they have to give a divorce. Therefore, she'll be usher labal as well. So since Rav was medayik from our Mishnah, that our Mishnah must be referring to with edim, and there's a brisa that says that with edim you're moitzi, even though there's children. So that's how we know that's why Rav learns that our Mishnah is speaking with children and with edim, and therefore you would still force him to divorce. Or there's another way that you could learn this. You could say that Rav learned that there's in fact a machlokes tonight, and he could learn that Hanimas Naisa Rebbe. He could learn that this brisa is going according to Rebbe. What does that mean? It's going according to Rebbe. Zok to Gemara. The second wide line is beloy banim loy nafka beloy edim. Without children, even without children, you need edim. So until now, we wanted to say that Rav holds the reason why you needed edim is because you had children. Maybe Rav could hold that you even need children. You even need edim without children, which is how we originally learned Pshat and Rav. But Bahanu Masnisa, the Amri Nafka, the brisa that we just brought here, that indicates that even without children, with a rumor, we would force Reuben to divorce her. That's Rebbe Amridin. That's Rebbe. Rebbe is much more leaning to force someone to divorce his wife. The Tanya, Roichel Yoitze, the Isha Chageres Besina. What happens if a husband comes home and he sees that there's a peddler just leaving his house and his wife is quickly doing up her pants? That's a clear sign. What was she doing with her pants off when the Roichel was there? So when you have like a clear sign, even though you don't have Adam, but you have a very bad sign over here, that's enough to force a divorce. Therefore, according to Rebbe, you don't need Adam. Or, this is another interesting case, and please don't ask me for a detailed explanation. If there's saliva on the top of the canopy, that's a sign, Rashi says, that she was on her back, someone was on top of her, and in the passion, the throes of passion, somehow her saliva ended up on the ceiling, on the top of the canopy. Like I said, please don't ask me for details how that worked. Amar Rebbe. So Rebbe says, since it really looks bad, Teitze, we force a divorce. So Rebbe holds it's only with Adam. I'm sorry, Rav holds it's only with Adam that we force a divorce. Rebbe holds even if it's Mechur Hadover, we will still force a divorce. Or another case, and now we're on Chafei Amud Aleph, which is our daf. Minalayim hafuchim tachas hamita. It's actually a shiloh what that means. Rashi says if the shoes are if there's men's shoes under her bed that are turned upside down, why would they be turned upside down? Apparently, people those days were able to track from the form of the shoe. So if I would see the top of the shoe, I would know who's the perpetrator. So they were upside down, and because of that, why did the Noyef put the shoes upside down? So some of them coming to see the shoes won't be able to recognize who they were. So if the shoes were in a regular position, everyone would know, this is Plony's shoes, and everyone would know that Plony was in bed with Rachel. But if his shoes are turned over, clearly someone's trying to disguise himself. So once again, Amar Rebbe.
Wait. Hang on. If the shoes were in the right position and you didn't know, and they weren't yours, so what? How does that flipping them over help? If there's men's shoes under your wife's bed, you've got a problem.
That's true, but the perpetrator won't be easily recognized by his shoes.
I flip them back over.
Trying to hide himself. You mean after I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but the Gemara anyway changes the pshat in a second. So Amar Rebbe, what does that help? Like a Victor Ash, turn them back over, it's who they belong to. So in that first glance, he can't tell who it is. The husband's going to come to see what's going on. He'll turn the shoes over. Beryl, I'm killing him. Right. So exactly what does that help? Ella, this is what it means. Ella makam min alayim hafukim. Rashi says what happens is as follows. What happened is either it means you saw that there was another pair of shoes there because the earth underneath the bed, they didn't have hard surface floors. You saw there's a disturbance there. Clearly there were shoes there at some point today, and it's not there. That's one Pshat Rashi. The other Pshat Rashi is they had a special place where she put her shoes under the bed and where he would put his shoes under the bed. If the husband comes home and sees that his wife's shoes are in his shoe slot, she had a guest there who didn't know where the shoes of the husband belong, and he might have put his shoes in her slot. So therefore, she shifted her shoes over to his slot, and then she didn't shift them back. So that's how you can help. In other words, very simple. The husband came home and the toilet seat was up. Obviously, somebody else was there. It's not a joke. There's a younger man who I know from Williamsburg. His name you would never guess. It's Yosy. And he told me that there was a time in Williamsburg where things were very, very bad. And there was a girl whose both parents worked, and she got into trouble with some neighbors who were Puerto Ricans. And after she got married, the husband was choshed, something was funny was going on. Puerto Ricans would be knocking on their door sometimes. And his Rav, in Satmar told him, make sure when you leave the koil in the morning to put this toilet seat down. And when you come back, see if the toilet seat's up. The kachava. And he actually caught his wife that way. It was a horrible tragedy. Anyway, the hilchasa kavasei the Rav. The halacha is like Rav, who says that we only tell someone to divorce their wife if there's Eidim, and not like Rebbe. The hilchasa kavasei the Rebbe. And the halacha is like Rebbe that even for something that's mechur hadavar, you also make a husband divorce his wife. So frankly, more kosher hilchasa. These are two contradictory piskei halacha. So K'malakasha, habakal the pasuk, habakal the light pasuk. If you have a rumor that stops, then without Eidim, we pass it like Rab, and you don't force the husband to divorce his wife. But habakal the light pasuk, if it's a rumor that's not stopping, then we're passing like a Rebbe that you force him to divorce his wife. Zok to Gemara, kal the light pasuk, v'leka Eidim kirebi. If it's a rumor that's not stopping, even if there's no Eidim, we'll paskin like Rebbe that you have to divorce your wife. And kala the pasuk. But if there's not a good rumor, the rumor stops. But the ika Eidim, then Kirav will paskin like Rav that he has to be Moshe's wife. Frank the Gemara, but kala the pasuk atkan. Exactly what is considered a kala the pasuk, and we have this in my cotton as well. Or my Abaye, Amrli, my mother told me, and we know the mother of Abaye, the woman that he referred to as his mother, was really the woman who took care of him, because Abaye was a Yosy, and the word Abaye spells Asher B'cha Yerucham Yosy. So Abaye was a Yosy, and she told him, Doime de Masa Yoima Upal. And Rashi has two pshatim in what Doime de Masa means. One pshat of Doime de Masa is Chashud Ya'ir. If someone's chashud and there's a rumor going around him for a day and a half, that's something we have to say that he's guilty. Or another pshat is, if you don't know, we don't know. If we don't know, and there's a rumor, it's a day and a half. That we say that's the last day and a half, it doesn't mean cumulatively 18 hours of rumor. Rather, it has to be consistent. It has to be a consecutive 18 hours. Not 18, 24 and 12, 36 hours. 36 hours. It has to be a consecutive 36 hours of rumor without it ever stopping. If the rumor went away and then it came back, and altogether it was 36 hours, it won't work. Because and that we say if a rumor stops, the rumor is bottled, that's only if the rumor is about somebody that has very, very powerful, and if he hears you talking about him, he'll kill you. Well, the fact that the rumor stops doesn't prove anything. That just means people are afraid to speak against the Trudeau government because their bank accounts will get locked up. But if the only reason why the protest stopped is because the people are afraid their bank accounts are going to get locked up, the Machmas Yirahu, that it's not a proof that the rumor stopped. And even a rumor is only considered a problem if there's no enemies. If it's coming from Nazis and fringe movements and misogynists and racists, then that's not considered a rumor. It's only because they're angry at the government, but of course they're wrong. You could blame it on the fact that they're trying to take someone down, which happens. This is a typical cheap political trick. You know, we always hear in politics that there's a rumor going out on the candidate that he did some indiscretion. This is mamish what we're talking about here. If they want to take him down, then you can't really believe rumors. Zok more about it. One divorced his wife because there was a shash of znus. Lo yachzer, he may not take her back. Mishum neder. What if she made a neder that was interfering with her marriage, and because of that he divorced his wife? Lo yachzer, he's not allowed to take her back. Why aren't you allowed to take her back? So Rashi tells us the reason why he can't take her back is because what happens if he really loves his wife? She made a neder, and because of that he can't live with her, so he's forced to divorce her. And then somehow she gets to a chacham and she's able to find a Pesach and he's matir the neder, right? So what's the husband going to do? The husband will say, had I known that you could be matir this neder, I would have never divorced you. which means his get is bottled. So that wouldn't be a problem. But if she already got married based on the get, that's a real problem. Because she already got married based on the get. Then he's going to be mevatel the get because he'll say, I never gave the get under the assumption that I couldn't be matter another. And now she's also lebalu leboil. Now she was mazal. And it's the same thing with Hamoich's sister Mishum Shemra. Let's say he's Moicha Mishum Shemra, she marries somebody else, and then he finds out that you know what, she's innocent. He debunked the rumor, he looked into it. That's for a claim.
That's why I have to do a solid gift. It can't be all tonight.
Oh, so because of that, they tell him, Zostavisin, if you're going to give a wife a get because of another, or if you're going to give your wife a get because of the Shemra, you should know, no matter what happens, you're never getting her back. So therefore, he'll be really sure before he does it. Shalach le Rabba bar Huna, le Rabba bar Rav Nachman. Yilamdeni Rabbeinu, Rabba, please teach us. Kanes mahu sheyotzi. What if, in this case, he took her back? So he divorced her because of Shemra, and then he took her back. Or, and of course, she wasn't married to anybody else in between. Or he divorced her because of a neder, and he took her back. Do we force him to divorce her again? Amrlei Tanina, it's a Mishnah, our Mishnah. Hanitna leishasish. If there's a rumor about a woman that she's an leishasish, voitzia mitachas yadai, and he divorced her, the Mishnah says, even though he married her, we force her to divorce. Now, don't forget, our Mishnah is not talking about Shimon, the husband, remarrying her. The Mishnah is talking about Reuven, the perpetrator, marrying her. The Mishnah says if the perpetrator married her, you force him to divorce. Amalei, so he answered, Midami. Hasam haitzi uha. First of all, the Mishnah says haitzi uha, which means Bezin forced him. Al piedim. So of course, it's going to be us. It's an Isra Daraisa. Our Bryce is talking about an Isra Darabanan to take her back to prevent him from being chayzer on the get. Rabbi bar Rav Nachman masnisa nami haitziatna. Rabbi bar Rav Nachman learned our Mishnah not like Rav, that it's haitziu with Adam. Rather, Rabbi bar Rav Nachman learned our Mishnah is also speaking in a case where the woman was divorced because of a rumor and the husband divorced her, not forced by this. Frank the more vakatami dummy, you still don't have a right. Hachabal. Here we're talking about the husband taking back his wife. The Hassan Boyle, the Mishnah is talking about Reuven, the perpetrator marrying her. Maybe by the perpetrator we force him to divorce. But who said by the husband we forced to divorce? Amar lei, Shaper Dami Adati. Just because that the Mishnah is speaking about the Boyle, Reuven, the perpetrator, and our Bryce here is discussing the husband wanting to take his wife back, there shouldn't be a difference. Because in either case, Hacha Amar Rabban lo yichnes. Here, the Rabban say you should not marry her. And if you marry her, you have to divorce her. Hachanami. So too over here. Amir ban lo yachshavim kadosh yotzi. We just bring a right that when the Rabbanan outlaw a certain marriage, they're going to enforce it, and even if you violate their plak, they're going to force you to be mitzvah. But it's not a riot. In fact, in our Mishnah, of course, they don't let Reuben stay married to her. But in these cases where the husband took her back, even though he only gave her a get because of a neder, or he only gave her a get because there was a bad rumor, we do let him keep her. Because Hasam alumi almalakala. If we let Reuben remain married to Rachel, it's going to double down on the rumor. It's going to prove to everybody, there must have been wrongdoing. Hacha, here's exactly the opposite. I'm reading Kamali Bakala Velaise. If the husband took his wife back, he obviously did his homework and obviously had proven to himself that the rumor was unfounded, so therefore it will not grow a bigger stink, and therefore we would let him stay married to her. Okay. Now, it's not talking about, it doesn't seem to be talking about the case of the neder. It seems to be only talking about the case of divorcing a wife because of a bad rumor, because the Gemara's chiluk that it makes is only like Abidah. Okay, Gavaltik. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Hamevi get from Medina Sayyam. We know in the first Mishnah Gittin it says that if you bring a get from Medina Sayyam where they're not Bekin Lashma, and there aren't people coming back and forth that could verify these signatures, the shliach that brings the get, he's one shliach by himself, he has to say, I saw which Adam sign it, and I saw them sign it. He has to say that. Now, that means Reuben could have come from Avdis Hayom and he could have delivered a get to Shimon's wife. And the whole get is hinging on his delivery, on his testimony. So he's not allowed to bring the get, and then after the get, he tells Rachel, "Hey Rachel, hey Han, what are you doing tonight?" Right? He's not allowed to spark up a relationship with her. Lo yisas ishtai. And the reasoning is obvious. He is the one who delivered to her get. If he marries her, it almost looks like maybe he faked this so that he could get this woman because he wanted this woman. However, if an aide comes along and says, "Mace, her husband died," and we know that because of a guna, we're matar and isha on the shuk, if even one aide comes along and says that her husband died, or haraktiv, what if an aide comes along and says, "I killed her husband, so now she's mutal shuk, so I want to marry her," or harganu, I was part of a group that killed her. There, lo yisas ishta. There, he may not marry this woman. He's still believed. He's admitting to murder. He's believed because someone else could marry her, but he himself cannot marry her. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, haraktiv, if you said that you're the murderer yourself, then you're not even believed to matter her. You're a murderer. How could we trust a murderer to say this? So therefore, she can't even marry somebody else. Harganu, but if I say we killed her, and the Gemara is going to explain, I was part of the group, but I wasn't the perpetrator, I didn't pull the trigger, then he is believed, and Tinasa Yishtar. A murderer? That's exactly what the discussion of the Gemara is going to be. But whatever it is, we have now a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama. The Tanakama holds that even if you're implicating yourself in a crime, you're nemon lagabe being matir the lady. Rabbi Yehuda holds if you're implicating yourself in the crime, you're not nemon lagabe the lady. And that's what the Gemara is going to discuss. Zok Gemara, Taima libin medina tayam. The only reason why we say that this person who delivered the get cannot marry this woman is because since he brought the get from Medina Sayam, it hinges, the kashrus of the get hinges on his testimony. But what if someone was delivering a get in the Yisrael? Well, you don't need to say but you're still delivering it. But the lav we're not relying on his nemanis over here. There, Yisas Yishtoi, even the shliach who brought the get is allowed to marry that woman based on him bringing the get. Frag the Gemara, how could you say that? In a case where someone says testimony that her husband died, we say he's not allowed to marry the wife, and there we're not relying on the aid who said we're not relying on the aid who said mace, because really an aid echad can't be matar and isha l'shuk. Why is it that we let a woman marry if only one aid comes and says her husband died? It's the Amar Mar Isha Daiko Mitzvah. It's because it's based on the fact that a woman is not going to remarry until she does her own independent research and she's completely satisfied with certainty that her husband is in fact dead. So we're not really relying on the aid. The aid is just a catalyst to set this chain reaction in motion. Yet it still says La Yisa Shishta. There's a very big difference. There's no document that gives validity to anything. So it's all based on him coming and saying that I saw that your husband died. But when I'm bringing a get, I'm actually bringing something. I'm bringing a document. So that removes me a little bit from it, and therefore I'd be allowed to marry this woman. The Tan we learn, Ma ben get lamisa. What's the difference between a get and misa? Sheksav moichiach. By a get, you have ksav. Where was it relevant? Ma ben get lamisa. Because the halach is a woman who's not neman to say meis baila. A woman's not neman to say I saw her husband die, but she is neman to bring a get. Why? Because when you bring a get, the get itself is a document that has validity, and therefore will even accept it from a woman. Meis haraktiv harganua lo yisas ishtay. So his wife may get married, even though the aid is implicating himself in murder, as he's saying the aidus, yet he himself can't marry her, but others can. It's just the aid himself won't be able to marry her as ishtay. But she is mutter. In other words, we're trusting the testimony of a murderer. What if someone says testimony that Reuven sodomized me, right? But I wasn't willing. He raped me. So the halacha is someone who does mishkav zachar is chayiv skila. So the luck is who va'achim is start from the hard guy. So Reuben come to Bezin with Shimon, and Reuben and Shimon say testimony that Gary raped him, and even though Reuben is the victim, he could still be one of the Edom to bring death to the perpetrator. But Lertzaini, if Reuben said, I'm saying Edis that Gary slept with me, but I was a willing participant, well then Roshu, then Reuben is saying testimony on himself that he was an active participant in this illegal activity. So if Reuben was saying I was raped, then Reuben could be an aid to kill the person as for Mishkav Zachar. But if Reuben was a willing participant, then he's a Russia and his aid is not Neman. So why is there any difference if a man comes and says, I killed your husband? How could he be believed Bechlal? Because he's testifying that he's a Russia at that same Aedis.
Don't we say Ein Adam Mesa Machmas Russia?
We're going to get to that. Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
We're going to get on the base. Shainu Aedis Isha Takilu Barabanan. And if you're going to say that you're right, normally he's not Neman, and that's why you can't kill the perpetrator because of it. But here we want to be matter a woman who would otherwise be a guna. So we'll even accept the aegis of a murderer. You cannot say that. Because Rav Menashe said, Gazlin did Devrayim. If he's only a Gazlin Midevrayim, so he's not Pasal Aegis Midaraisa. He's only Pasal Midarabanan, like Amasacha Bekuvia, those are kosher Aegis Isha. They're believed Aegis Isha. Because the Rabbanim are makel to accept that Aedis to be matter and aguna l'shon. But Gazlan the divrei Torah, but if he's a full-blown Gazlan, so the rice is Pasal Aedis, then Pasal Aedis Isha. So we see that someone who's Pasal Aedis is Pasal Aedis Isha. So someone who comes along and says, I killed your husband, is a Rasha, and for sure he shouldn't be believed. So Dr. Gemara, Nemo, Rav Menashe, the Amar Kerav Yehuda, Rav Menashe, who holds that he's not believed, would be like Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, who also says that this aid is not believed. Amalach Rabbi Menashe, no. Another Amri Afidu Rabbanon. I would agree even to the Rabbanon that they are believed. So even though I'm saying here that a Gazlan the Divrei Torah is Pasal Aedis Isha, in our Mishnah it's worse. You know why? The time of the Rabbanon Hachak to the Rabbah. The reason why the Rabbanon do accept the testimony of this murderer is because of Rava's halacha, which David Dalty mentioned earlier. The Amar Rava Adam Karav Eitzel Atzmai Bein Adam Mesa Masmai Rasha. A person is a Karav to himself, and he cannot make himself into a Rasha, and therefore we're Mechalkinan Dibure Legabe being matter this Isha L'Shuk. We accept his dibur, but Legabe him condemning himself, Legabe that we don't accept his dibur. Zok Gemara, let me Rabbi Yosef, Domak Rabbi Yehuda. Let's say Rabbi Yosef holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef who argues on Rabbi Menashe and says, Rabbi Yosef on Nomer Aleph said that Pliny Ravani Litzani Russia. Rabbi Yosef says if someone says Pliny Ravani Litzani he's a Russia, and therefore you don't accept his edus, maybe that goes like Rabbi Yehuda who also says you don't accept his edus. Rabbi Yosef, another Amir Afilu Rabbanan. I would say even according to the Rabbanan, I hold. Even if you hold like the Rabbanan that you accept the Aedis, in our Mishnah, you wouldn't accept the Aedis to kill somebody. Because the shiny Aedis Isha, the Akil Barabana. Maybe we're makel by Aedis Isha to accept the testimony of a Rasha, but to kill a perpetrator of Mishkav Zachar, we would not accept this testimony. Let me just finish Rabbi Menashe, and Rabbi Menashe, who holds that the Gazan Daraisa is Pasal Aedis Isha, would go to contribute. What are we saying? Based on Russia, Lagabe himself is not believed, but Lagabe them it is believed. And that's alumnus that you're splitting up his edus. We have a minute or so let's quickly jump into Rashi. Rashi explains it nicely. So we'll look at the third line in Rashi. Rava Polakal Rabbi Yosef Omar. Afilu Omar Pliny running Lertsoini. Why? The kivin shezem eschavin laedus, since he's mechavin laedus, nemanu etzel chaveroi, he's believed lagabe having an impact on his friend, but the ein neman al atzmoi, masha amar lertzoini. So he's believed that Pliny Ravani, he's not believed on the word lertzoini. The adam karve is al atzmoi, a person is related to himself. The Kor Pasal Edus, Bain L'Tov Bain L'Ra. Hilchach Ein Yinasir Rasha B'Edus Atzma. His own Edus doesn't make him into a Rasha. We believe the Pliny Ravani, we don't believe the Retain. Bain Ad Mezim as Edus it's a Latzma L'Yasus Rasha. Frek Rashi, don't we have a halacha by Das Baldin Kameh Aiden Bami? So he's admitting his guilt. That's only the Rashi, that's only the Indian moments. So there was actually a very interesting shaila. What happened? It was a shaila that was asked to Moshe Feinstein about a man. It must have been a second marriage, and he lived for many years in Montreal. And on his second marriage, he married a woman from Toronto. I don't know who it is, so don't guess. But if you have to guess, I'd like to hear. I'm curious. So there's a man from Montreal married a woman from Toronto, and he told his wife, "When I die, I want to be buried in Montreal. That's where most of my life was. That's where most of my family was." And he died, and she buried him in Toronto. And then she started getting dreams that he was coming to her in a dream, telling her, "Hey, you lied to me. You were supposed to bury me in Montreal." So she got a little spooked, and she asked the Shaila, "Could they be mafana? You're not allowed to willy-nilly move around the body." But so the Shaila was, maybe she shouldn't be trusted to say that he wants to be buried in Montreal because she already violated that. And therefore, maybe she doesn't have an amonos. So Rav Moshe said, this is not Hilchas Eidus, like in our Gemara. Avada she has an amonos, and Avada they can move the body to Montreal. Mati, you know who it is? Okay. Yeah, could be his first one was in Montreal. That's right. Okay.
I always wonder what's going to be.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how old. I don't know. Okay, Zok Gemara. Haraktiv harganu atinas. Zok Gemara. Maishna haraktiv, umaishna harganu. What's the difference? Where according to Rabbi, by one you believe, the one you not believe. So Gemara. I say, if you said I was with his murderers, harganu, but I wasn't a murderer, I didn't pull the trigger. That's why you believe. But Tanya, I said, Amr Rabbi Yehuda, Maisa Ballistim Echad. There was once a murderer. He was being led out to be killed. He was being punished with death. He was being led to his death sentence. So Amr Lahem, and he told the people around him, please go tell this woman that Ani Haraktias Baila, I killed her husband. So even though I'm a lowlife, but at least I don't want her to be usher. I don't want it to be Laguna. Tell her I killed him. Where did I kill him? B'chnisasi lelud, when I went into Lud. So he gave him coordinates. This is where the murder occurred. And Vasio is Ishtai. And they allowed his wife to be married. So this seems to indicate that even if someone is condemning himself while he's saying the Eidos, he is believed. Amalem, said it's not a right. Mishamai, for there you have a right to me. You know why? Because it's Ba'emer. What did this murderer say? He didn't say I killed him. He said, Ani hayisim harga. I was there, but I didn't kill him. Frank the Gemara, what do you mean? The story is Vahalistim Katani. Aren't we saying that the guy was a gangster? Yeah, he was swept up with other gangsters in the sweep, but he not necessarily was a murderer. Frank the Gemara, what do you mean? They're killing him. What are they killing him for, if not for murder? We're not talking about a Jewish bezin where they verified that he's a murderer before they kill him. We're talking about secular courts. They kill everybody. They're not discriminating. Sorry? But the trial is Russia. The trial is Russia. What happens if a woman made a nether that I'm usher to my husband, right? And now she has a shayla. Do I have to enforce this nether? The Chacham paskins the shayla. Yeah, you're usher to your husband. By the way, you want to go out tonight, right? That wouldn't be appropriate, right? He just told her that she can't live with her husband, and then he wants to take her out on a date, and he wants to marry her. So the Rav who asked her to her husband may never marry her because otherwise it doesn't look good. What if he was the dayan where a woman made miyun or a woman got chalitza? Then Yisa'ena, then the dayan could marry this woman to Bezdin because he wasn't there by himself. There must have been a Bezdin there. So there's others that show that he's not corrupt. Treit Gemara, Ha'itira. If he asked this woman to her husband, then he's not allowed to marry her. But what if he said she's mutter to her husband, and then at a later date they got divorced? Then he is allowed to marry her. So, but my asking, what is the case? If he was by himself, chad mi motzi mater, an individual dying can't be matter. So there had to have been three people here. If he asked her, he had to have been one of three. If it's one of three, why would you be choshet him and say he cannot marry this woman? It's not him alone who's saying she's not her husband. There's two other dayanim there. But now we learn, really, when he asked her by herself. You need three dayanim. He was a yachid mumcha, so he was able to be matter her or ask her on his own. And therefore, since he's a yachid mumcha, it's one alone, and therefore he's not allowed to marry her. Time at the bezin. The whole reason why we allow him to marry this woman is because he didn't do it by himself. There was a bezin involved. He was a member of the bezin, which is three people. Habitray, but if it was only two people, loy. Why? Two people should be enough. What if there's two Edom who sign a star that Reuben sold a field to Shimon? Those two Edom are not allowed to ever buy that field from Shimon because it casts a shadow on their signing on the sale, because it's to their benefit that Shimon should own this property because they want to buy from Shimon. Or Val Gedisha. If two Edom sign on the Gedisha, then the halach is they are allowed to forget. They were not choshit, and they are allowed to buy. If there's two Edom, there's two of them there, therefore we're not choshit. We'll talk to Gemara. You're right. You're right. Even in our case of chalitza, it's enough that there's two people. So why does the Mishnah Neshu Bezdin? It's higuva kamash malon lafukim imandamar miyan befnei shnayim kamash malon that miyan is bigimel. All the Mishnah is telling us is an FYI that for me you need a best, you need gimel. But of course, two is enough to remove chashad. What if he illegally married her? So we're talking about a chacham. A chacham asked a woman to her husband, and then he married her. He wasn't supposed to, or he brought the get and said he wasn't supposed to marry her, but he did marry her. Do we force him to divorce? Kahana Amar Kadesh Moitzi. Rabashi Amar Kanais Eine Moiti. It's a shaila. Tana lahu Rabzuti Dilei Rapabi Kadivri Omer Kanais Eine Moiti. If the dying married this woman, even though he wasn't allowed to, you don't force him to divorce. Amalei Rabban Rabashi Gemara Oisfar. This halacha that you're saying that he could stay married to her, do you know it because you're makabel from your Rebbe, or do you have a svara to prove that? Amalei Masnisni. It's a Mishnah. Our Mishnah. It says Anitan Mishivcha V'Nishtachara. Or maybe it's because of this guy, you're not allowed to marry her. But if you married her wrongfully, you don't force him to divorce her. Alma, you see, if it's not really a problem, it's just because people are going to talk. Even though you shouldn't do the marriage, we don't force him to divorce his wife. Here, if the Talmud Chacham marries her, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the people are going to talk not nicely. For that, you don't force someone to divorce his wife. So it's even better. So if over there, the Mishnah passes you're allowed to keep her, Kol Shkein here you're allowed to keep her. Okay. That's the Takat of Psak. In Chamin.